Final Fantasy IX is this really interesting moment in the Final Fantasy development history because it was meant to be this send-off to the PlayStation era and hark back to the original eras of Final Fantasy. But it was a big left turn from an aesthetic perspective from the previous two games of the franchise, 7 and 8, and arguably even 6, and definitely 10, which follows. These went for a much more realistic look, and then also were meant to kind of be this like modern era magic world versus Final Fantasy IX, which is very much set in an ancient European style fantasy setting. And in development for Final Fantasy, wanting to figure out how to create the aesthetic for Final Fantasy IX that harks back to that era, but with the PlayStation era, one era and system and technology, the developers looked at one specific development studio and franchise of movies for influence. And that is the Jim Henson Company. Specifically the style and designs of both Labyrinth, and most importantly, the Dark Crystal. When you look at kind of the design aesthetic of the different creatures, characters, and worlds of these movies, we're able to create this very different dark fantasy world that felt realistic and lived in. You very quickly start noticing and seeing the similarities between the world that Squaresoft and Square Enix created in relationship to the Labyrinth, Muppets, and specifically the Dark Crystal. Like, look at Queen Braum, and then come on. It makes so much sense. Now, speaking of which, if you love The Labyrinth, or you love Dark Crystal, or you love that era of dark fantasy, Jim Henson vibes, you should play Final Fantasy IX if you haven't. It is a next step style into that universe. That is the world you're playing in, and it is my favorite, one of my 3 favorite video games of all time. You should play Final Fantasy IX regardless, but if you like this, you really should.